Tarantino's got a 9th movie out, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. We saw it. We're going to talk about it. Sides of Coin starts right now. Yeah, man. Yeah, so that was, I liked that movie a lot. I'm really excited to get into this. I've been waiting patiently but eagerly to discuss this one. And the only person I could rope into watching the 3-hour movie with me is Angela, and she joins us today.
Hey, what's up?
So we're doing this as a more intimate rig here. We don't have the third producer. We're just going to talk about this, the two of us, and to get into what we liked or didn't like. So I'll start off with you. What was your general reaction to it?
I was a fan. I love Tarantino. Love this movie. Solid flick.
Yeah, I would definitely agree that solid flick is apt. I think that it's gotten a lot of criticism for being a little long-winded. I wonder if I had seen this movie not knowing that it was a Tarantino film, if I would have given it the time of day and really stuck it out. But I'm grateful that I did, because Tarantino is a master at setting up all of these things and then tying them all together at the end. The dialogue was amazing.
Yeah.
And we'll get into a lot of it. But basically, we're gonna spoil it. We're gonna do it all. So that's our, I guess, spoiler free. I wanna move into it really quickly here. The plot of the movie, it revolves around the Manson murders, and it's sort of like a alternative take on what would have happened instead of following the really grisly story. Obviously the true one was horrific when Sharon Tate and her friends were brutally murdered by members of the Manson family. This one takes a little bit of a different angle. It's sort of, once upon a time, right? It's a fairy tale in Hollywood. So, yeah, I really, really like this movie. Let's get into it. It follows Rick Dalton, played by Leonardo DiCaprio. He's a stumbling actor. He's having a really kind of a difficult time. He's past his prime. He used to do westerns and stuff like that back in the day. And it's a buddy film, and it has his buddy Cliff Booth, played by Brad Pitt, who's his stunt double, and they're best friends. And now, even though he's sort of running low on work, Cliff can't always be a stunt man. He just is handles odd jobs for Rick and does things around the house. Basically, it follows these two as they go through misadventures throughout Hollywood, trying to keep their careers afloat and everything. And then they basically end up changing events of history, so that way, instead of the Manson family members trying to murder Sharon Tate that night, they end up trying to murder Rick Dalton. And it's this whole set of circumstances that work out, so that way the third act can happen. And what a third act it was.
Oh boy, was it.
But
I loved it. It was such a good build-up, and I honestly didn't know what was going to happen. I knew that it was based off of the Manson murders, so I assumed it was going to have a far worse ending than it did.
Right.
I mean, you kind of go into it with that expectation, but I'm really glad that it didn't. For obvious reasons. You know, nobody. I think it would be really hard. It would be very, very hard to see that on screen.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, it's especially because we know Tarantino is known for his violence and like what he has shown on screen in the past, and he's just not afraid to get into it.
Right.
In the whole violence.
But he also
genre.
really likes to, while he is violent, he likes to put a sort of positive spin on things and really correct injustices throughout history. You saw that with Django, and you saw that with Inglourious Basterds, and now this one.
Yeah.
It's really neat to see how he. And one of the things is, while this movie is long, and I don't really blame people that say it gets a little boring and maybe you could cut out 10 to 15 minutes, I really can't think of where I would cut, because everything that gets set up, it pays off in the end, in that final act, because otherwise it would just be, where the fuck did he get his flamethrower from, and all this sort of stuff. So every little detail ends up playing back into it, and I was very impressed by it. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, me too. It was definitely, I don't know, I didn't mind the length of it at all. I think it all added to just the characters and the story, and I don't know. I don't know who's saying that it was too long, but I disagree.
Basically, the whole internet, really, minus one or two people.
The whole internet can,
Yeah.
they're always complaining about literally everything. So,
They do that a lot. So let's talk about some of the extra people. There's a lot of people that show up in this movie. We talked about Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio, but Margot Robbie plays Sharon Tate. She doesn't get as much to do. She's not a lead, but this isn't really her story. She's mostly there to, while her performance is amazing, she does a really good job at capturing that sort of like star on the rise, sort of very flowy, happy individual, and it was really neat to see that. And it was sad too to see like so much life and so much vibrance, and knowing what happened in real life and how it was snuffed out and so brutally. It was and you were talking about how you were feeling this sort of sense of dread the whole way through.
Yeah, she does seem like a character who might die in the end. You know, like I guess they didn't really go too depth into her personality. There was some stuff about, you know, how she was going to go see her own movie, and like, you know, she was really she was like looking around at the audience members as they were like applauding her and laughing at her jokes and everything, and you know, she just seemed like she was meant to be depicted as sort of a maybe self-obsessed actress, kind of a character, you know.
And she, well, I don't know. I mean, self-obsessed potentially, but she was enjoying her moment, right?
Yeah,
like she had made it finally. She was crossing over the mountain. It was cool to see.
For sure.
You know, I've dabbled in show business, not in an acting sense, but like playing in bands and things. And when you have that moment where you're playing in front of people, like I can relate to that. It's a huge moment, and you feel like, wow, this might be real for me. And again, thinking in that moment, watching her go through this, you think that it's going to end so badly for her. And it was just really masterfully done. Also, I really loved how they left Sharon Tate proper in the actual film. So like he went through and he edited in, you know, DiCaprio in The Great Escape and did all this sort of movie magic stuff. It was so awesome. But I really loved seeing real Sharon Tate in the film, and using just straight archival footage of that movie. That was awesome.
Yeah,
because it sort of kept it as if like, you know,
it's like in memory of kind of thing.
Yeah, and in memory of the life she could have had, and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, that was neat, and he did such a great job of capturing the aesthetic and the vibe of the late 60s. And you know, like just the whole movie, obviously it's Tarantino, so you know it's going to be shot well, you know it's going to look great, but it seems like you almost have to say that, you know, just it bask in the beauty of it, how just everything was so real. Like they filmed on location in Hollywood supposedly, but you can't see any, like every car is right. Like they just, I mean, it just looks so good. It was cool. I'm sure, you know, maybe they'll be able to frame by frame it and find something later, but it just, it was such a work of art, and I just truly, truly enjoyed myself.
Yeah. I really wish we had a shot of it, but one of my favorite shots was like her white boots walking.
Yes.
In the, like on the sidewalk when she was going, I think she was walking to the bookstore and then like the theater. It's like, I mean, just like the classic 70s white boots, like leather. It was very cool. It was a classic Tarantino shot too. I just like, even if I hadn't known it was him, I would look at it and be like, obviously, yes.
And the way he does dialogue, man, I mean, it's just so, it's so cool because we're conditioned. It sounds so sinister, but you know, like the way the movies come out now, we're conditioned to have like everything pays off in the end, and everything is,
or we think we know what's going to happen,
right? And he's not afraid to sit you down and say, let's enjoy this moment, and sort of like put a camera here while these two people are talking. And it feels so natural. It doesn't feel like you're watching a movie. It feels like you're watching friends talk and hang out, and it's just, I mean, you never really realize how scripted and how, you know, movie like other films come off until you see it done that well. It was just really, really awesome. I enjoyed it greatly.
Yeah, for sure. I think that he includes a lot of little details in his just shots or scenes or whatever that maybe you think are building up to something and you're not sure, but the way he does it, I think he's doing it on purpose. He's like trying to get you to figure out the ending before it ends, but you can't, you know.
Right.
I like how he does that, how he's like, what's important, what do I need to pay attention to, and then you're just never sure until the end. You're like, okay, I see it all kind of coming together now, but there were so many details in that movie. Like Like the flamethrower, for instance.
Right.
Like, there was just that, brief thing about how he did a movie and he actually used a real flamethrower and he learned how to use it and all that. And in the end, he got to use it on the guy who was trying, or the girl who was trying to murder him, or and broke into his house and all that, and was trying to kill everybody. So he got to actually use that, so that was pretty cool. It was my favorite moment. I think, of the movie.
The movie was a little long, but I think that it all served so that way when you got to that point, like when, man, I tell you, the performances in this movie are great too. We'll touch on that in a second, but when you get to that final moment when he finally sees that the girl's charging at him, Brad Pitt, and he throws that can of dog food, and it just snaps, awesome. And it's just like, okay, now we're in that Tarantino movie now, and it just, I was laughing hysterically through like, I mean, I looked over at you when we saw it in the theater too. We were just
like
rolling.
I audibly gasped at that moment. It was so intense because you don't you don't really expect man-on-woman violence too much nowadays because it very rarely happens in movies like that anymore.
That's probably a good thing.
Yeah,
it's not like we're out here picketing for
no.
More
I don't encourage
women,
violence against women. Let me be clear on that one.
But they're the Manson family, so
yeah, no, it's fine in this case, I think, because she was.
She had a
coming
knife.
at him. Yeah, she was trying to murder him. So I think at that point, if you throw a can of dog food at somebody,
it's all good.
It's all good.
And then he sicked the big pit bull on her too. That was, God, man, it was
pit bull was my favorite character.
It was so great, and it reminded me a lot, obviously, of Inglourious Bastards too. How like you see just the most evil people, and then they really just get what's theirs, and obviously it's a fairy tale, and it's sort of unsettling to think, well, that was a nice escape, but that's not the world we live in. And then you have to walk out of the theater with this sort of aura of there are bad people out there, and they won't always get what's coming to them. You have to watch out for that sort of stuff in your life, and it leaves you with a feeling odd, and I think that's just a testament to what he can do as a filmmaker to make you feel all those emotions and then sort of work through all this stuff. Like Brad Pitt's character, how he had that whole subplot angle there where you never really know if he actually killed his wife or not.
And yeah, for sure.
Some people I heard were complaining about that, and I mean, I would love to have known that he didn't, or it was an accident or whatever, get some closure, because I think he's a good guy. You're meant to think he's a good guy, but the whole time you're just kind of wondering.
I don't mind that he didn't tell us whether, or like there was no true flashback to like what happened in her death. I kind of like that because that's a lot of what's going on right now in the real world, is that people get put on trial, literally and figuratively, for things that we weren't there for. We don't, you can be found guilty, but there's always people on both sides who are like, oh, they're innocent, oh, they're guilty, obviously, you know. So I thought that was sort of a reference to the current
public
climate,
opinion, right? Yeah. No, that was
politics and not politics, but like I don't know, just like the public view on things.
Yeah,
how
society,
things have gone,
just the way the court of public opinion, how it works.
For
yeah,
sure.
I think you're exactly right. The way he worked in all these different side characters and things from Hollywood at the time, Bruce Lee was awesome. I mean, that was so funny, the way he worked in Bruce Lee, and the portrayal. I don't know if you could call it an impression almost, but it was it was really good. I enjoyed that quite a bit, and I didn't know. I mean, all that's true. I didn't realize Bruce Lee trained Sharon Tate for her role in that film. That was all real. That wasn't him riffing. So that was pretty interesting to learn.
I thought that's definitely cool.
But
I like the little girl.
Oh yeah,
she was one of my favorite characters.
It was
she's like giving Leonardo DiCaprio acting lessons
and reminding him like what's important and to try and everything. It's
take
so
this
cool.
seriously, like we're living our dream. You need to step it up, my guy.
Got a little baby fever for sure. Like I was like, man, I want to have a daughter. It's crazy. Yeah, it was so funny. But she was like pretending to care. She's like when Leonardo starts like freaking out about, because he sees himself in his story or whatever, and he's just like,
he's like, I'm just an irrelevant old actor,
Yeah, that's real sad for Easy Breezy. I'm tearing up and I'm not even reading it or whatever it was. It was just like, God, you're so hilarious.
So cute.
Timothy Olyphant did a really good job too. I loved his character as well. The sort of, up and coming young star. He was great. I know you haven't seen Justified, right?
I've seen the first episode, I think.
That's right. It's a great show, and it's just anytime you get to see him, it's a treat. I think the picture
did recognize him, yeah. I mean, I knew him from Justified because of you, but I didn't, I've never seen him act in very many things.
It's a really, really good show, and I like that he was there. I'm trying to think of, there's so many little things that popped up. This whole movie is a treat. Like, I could go frame by frame through this, or not frame by frame, but scene by scene, and just really talk about how much I loved it. But
I think the whole Manson crowd, those were
let's get into that.
When he goes to visit the reservation, or not the reservation, but
the movie ranch, right?
The movie
Spawn's
ranch,
yeah. So he met the girl Pussycat on the way, hitchhiking and stuff, and
and she brings him on down.
Right, yeah. So you got to see Lena Dunham and all the rest of the crew down there. It was well acted throughout. God, I love I don't know the name of the really ugly guy who he just punches right in the face. That was Brad Pitt's such a badass, man. That was really cool to see.
Yeah, it was cool.
God, I enjoyed that whole scene because again he played with your expectations, right? Like the whole time you're thinking George is dead. This old guy is straight
definitely
dead. There's no way he's and everything they said was true. And it was even at the end when he found out, he was like, "So what happens when she gets mad, George?" Nothing. I don't like disappointing her.
Yeah, I definitely thought he was being held, or maybe he was in a coma or something.
Right.
I didn't think he was going to be aware of his surroundings.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be something else. But I didn't expect that. I don't know what I expected. I kind of expected somebody to come out and jump him or something.
Right, yeah.
When he was slowly walking through the hallways back to the back of the house, I definitely thought he was going to get jumped.
Absolutely.
Because the way the movie set, or the way the scene set it up, it definitely seemed like it was
and it built the tension so much through the movie.
Yeah,
I mean, they released a little tension when he punched the guy in the face, but it kept building the tension throughout. So that way, in the end, that third act, it just explodes all over the screen, and it was amazing. But
I was definitely waiting for something.
It was neat
And
to
it
see,
happened.
and so there's another neat little thing. Bruce Dern obviously played George, but that was originally supposed to be Burt Reynolds.
Oh, was
and
it?
obviously, Burt Reynolds sadly passed, so he had to be switched out with Bruce Dern stepped up and replaced him in that role. But and then speaking of people who got are no longer with us, Luke Perry, this was his last movie, I think, to be released as well. So I know you're a big Riverdale fan.
Well, big as I don't know. I don't know if I'm a big fan.
You partake.
I do partake.
You partake in the Riverdale.
It's unfortunately very addicting. I don't know if I would consider myself a big old Riverdale fan. But yeah, Luke Perry.
I'm a
was
big
great.
old Lily Reinhardt fan.
Yeah, I know you are.
But no, that was interesting, or I guess kind of sad to see him on screen. It was a bittersweet thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think he did such a good job. He's such a good actor.
Yeah, I mean he had a scene, but it was neat to see all the same.
Yeah.
Who am I missing? Pacino. Pacino's character as the movie producer was awesome. I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he was very funny.
I mean, he's Pacino. It was great to see. I liked. I just, man, I love the movie. It was so cool when he goes to Italy and just all the the Leonardo
becomes
DiCaprio,
an Italian movie star,
arguing with Leonardo DiCaprio,
Shooting
right?
westerns.
Like Rick Dalton on Rick Dalton when he screws up that scene and then
gosh.
goes back to the
He's
trailer.
yelling at himself.
That was so funny and just so relatable too, because
gosh.
Again, when you're playing in bands and stuff, me and my brother, we'd play in these bands and you'd video your show and then you watch it back and you're just like, God damn it, I screwed that up, or oh shit, that was dumb, or whatever. And it reminded me of when he's watching his FBI with Brad Pitt, and they're just commentating over the whole thing, like, "Oh, he's a good guy," or "Oh, he was a dick," or whatever. It was very relatable. I can't imagine if you're in show business proper, doing acting or whatever. I bet this movie is just incredibly relatable, particularly if you're from that time period, especially.
Yeah.
I imagine it would be a lot like, us watching Endgame or something, seeing all these like Easter eggs and stuff like that. If you've seen, like, I noticed Musso and Frank's grill and different places in Hollywood and stuff, but I know I missed a ton of things.
It's definitely rewatchable. Like, I would definitely see that again, and maybe even a few times. I don't know. It's I guess I have like a basis for how good a movie is in my head of like, yeah, it was good. Would I rewatch it? Maybe yes, no. This one, definitely. I would definitely rewatch it.
I think there's we need to set up how we rate movies. I think it's like, was it a waste of your time? Was it acceptable? Was it good? Was it worth buying on Blu-ray? Or was it worth buying the damn Steelbook? You know what I mean? And I'm going to buy the Steelbook on this one. I don't know that it was like...
You buy a lot more movies than I do, but it doesn't mean I don't like them any less.
But I don't think it was like, top tier. But I think so far of movies I've seen this year, it bumped into number 2, I believe. There's Endgame and then... Okay. Or no, number 3. I think I like Toy Story. Toy Story just a little bit more than this so far. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, man. I thought it was great. I know there's more things we could talk about for sure. But if there's any final things you want to jump out at, and then we'll kind of wrap it up.
I don't know. I just thought it was so funny. I think in the not last, but close to last scene, when Brad Pitt was he on acid or LSD? Yeah,
we didn't talk about that. He took he bought the cigarette from the hippie girl dipped in acid.
He smoked it right before the Manson crew was about to come in and try to stab them all and shoot him and stuff, and he just
he killed that performance. It was so great.
It was so funny. Just because the guy came in and just pointed the gun at his head, and then he just took his finger gun and pointed it back, and just it was so
the
funny.
Manic, oh my god,
he's clearly just stoned AF, and he's just, oh man, it was I was dying.
Although the dialogue, the writing, oh my god, man, when he's laying on the gurney at the end, he's getting the report he's giving the report to the police, and he said devil shit. I'm a devil, I'm here to do devil shit. It's just
is that what he said?
It's Tarantino, man, how he takes these horrible things like the Nazis or slavery or the Manson murders, and he takes elements of what happened there in the darkest parts of human history or humanity at least, and then makes it so funny. It's and then at the end you're left questioning so much, I just laughed my ass off at a man throwing a can of dog food right in a woman's face and then flamethrowing her. You're left with so many questions about yourself. It makes you think of wow, the world we live in is messed up, and I am kind of messed up too, because I laughed at this really demented fairy tale version of it. It's so there's so much to think about after you leave the film, and I love that.
For sure.
Yeah, I don't.
You definitely wonder about it for a long time. Think about it. I think that's the mark of a good movie. Is just it makes you think and what would I do kind of thing. I don't know. It's definitely one to ponder.
For sure. Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it, and I said that enough times. I'm going to say it one more. Very, very highly recommend if you've got 2 or 3 hours. It was very worthwhile. Maybe. Oh, real quick before we get out, there is a 4-hour version that they're probably going to put to Netflix, much like they did with The Hateful Eight.
Yeah,
where there's a really long version that's on Netflix right now. Yeah, we're definitely going to see that, and we will do a video about that when it comes out as well.
Looking forward to it.
But yeah, that was awesome. Maybe we can rope a few more of the crew into finally watching the long one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really worth it. That was I would definitely recommend checking it out. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, just go to the movies, man. Watch it. It's been Sides of Coins. We'll see you next time. Just go to the movies, man. Watch it. Flawless execution. Rick fucking Dalton.